All right, welcome back to the IMNerd podcast, guys. I'm your host, Freyway, and I'm here with my co-host, Kenny. And we have returning special guest with us today, Anthony Simpson. We are going to be talking about
very
Stranger
special
Things.
guest today because, as Fraser said, Stranger Things. But it's not just us talking about Stranger Things. We have with us a behind-the-scenes expert, a man whose name is in the credits of Stranger Things Season 4, Episode 7.
Oh, cool. When's he going to show up?
Anthony Simpson. All right. But yeah, this is episode 75, actually. I think this is another milestone for the podcast, too. 75 episodes in. And yeah, Stranger Things, Season 4, we're going to be talking about it. I guess we can also mention the other seasons, but this season was so good that, and it just came out over the weekend, this Memorial Day weekend. So I spent a lot of the time binge watching it because it's 9 hours in total. It's very, very long. A lot of the episodes are well over an hour long. And there's a lot of content to absorb, but I do think that this season overall was amazing. It gave me the same feeling I got when I was watching season 1. I really didn't care for seasons 2 and 3, if I'm being honest. That's me personally. I saw a lot of the same sentiment.
I'm with you. By season 3, I kind of became a Stranger Things hater.
Me too.
Because everybody kept talking about how great it is, and season 2, I was season 1 I loved, 9 out of 10.
Same.
Season 2, I was it was a show. It was cool. It was maybe 5, 6 out of 10, whatever. Season 3, I kind of felt the same thing. I was whatever. It's it's a show. It's not bad, but it's just kind of a show. It's not what season 1 was to me.
Yeah.
And I kind of became a bit of a hater of it. But then I think this season is by far the best season since season 1. It's very good.
100%.
Am I the only one that likes season 2? Maybe because I like Sean Astin. I don't know.
In this call, you're the only one that likes season 2. I don't hate season 2. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's not even close to season 1.
I mean, I agree. It's not as good as season 1. It's not as good as season 1, but I thought I enjoyed it.
It kind of gives me Promised Neverland season 1 being amazing, and then season 2.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't seen Promised Neverland season 2, but I heard that it was terrible.
Season 2.
I heard it was everyone forgot about it bad.
I mean, I didn't even finish it. That's how bad it was. So, and honestly, I could have gone without Stranger Things season 2 altogether. And I'll say why I didn't really like seasons 2 and 3. So season 1, it had a lot of 11 in it. You know, she had all her powers, and it had a focus on her and her backstory and stuff like that, right? But season 2, when she took on that role of being bitchin', and this rebel punk rock style, meeting this other orphan that has powers, 8, I think it was number 8. That whole thing. And then the main evil, so they move past the Demogorgon and they have the Demodogs, or whatever you want to call them. It just started to seem like things were happening with a repeat effect where, season 1 you have the Demogorgon, then season 2 you have these Demodog things, then season 3 you have this big demon.
Wait. Because season 2's main villain was the Mind Flayer, not the Demo. The Demodogs are just kind of there.
And
I thought the Mind Flayer was an interesting interpretation of what the Mind Flayers are for anyone that's that's not a huge D&D nerd like I am.
But the problem with it is it just comes out of nowhere. The villains for 2 and 3, they just seem like they were doing this thing where every season the kids are going to have this random thing from the upside down appear. It's going to attack their town, and then they're going to beat it with 11 and then rinse and repeat. And so season 2 and 3 just followed that exact same formula, and it kind of got really boring because the villains don't have much behind them up until season 4. Season 4, the reason why I think season 4 is such a huge success and already heralded is probably the best season of the show ever, is because Vecna is literally a real person. Vecna has a real backstory that is tangible and that you can feel. He has motivations for why he does what he does. And he's not just a random villain that comes from the upside down. That's just, why is he killing kids? Why is this happening? Well, they explain exactly why he's doing everything that he's doing.
Okay, I will agree with you for season 3 because I don't like season 3. Season 3 for me was I was this needs to end. But I enjoyed season 2, and I think that season 3 had a terrible ripple effect on season 2.
I do. So that is partially true for me. I will. So when season 2 came out, I was it was cool. I liked it, but I didn't love it like I liked season 1. I was season 2 was cool, whatever. But when season 3 came out, it definitely rippled back where I went and looked at season 2 again. I was this shit is just not like
Yeah,
looking at 2
like-
and 3 together. I was like, this shit is just not good. Like what the
Yeah.
fuck?
Yeah, like season 3 really almost like ruined it. You know how like The Legend of Zelda came out and then Link's Adventures came out and almost ruined it for the whole
Almost killed
thing?
Zelda. Almost
Like,
killed Zelda right there.
It's almost like that because like
yeah.
because I thought that the Mind Flayer was a really cool like expansion and intrigue into like what this world is, and I was like, okay, they're like expanding into like what I guess the Stranger Things are, and like
Yeah.
if the Mind Flayer is like the big bad, right, and the whole reason why like the Demogorgon in the first place showed up, then like I want to know more in season 3. And then in season 3 they just rehashed the same plot and they were like, here's the Mind Flayer again, but like in flesh form, which actually they did that's actually also based on another D&D monster. I forgot what the name of it is, but it's like a goo monster that basically it kills you and it can use a part of itself to basically like remake you. It like
reanimate.
Like,
I love
it makes
the D&D
a clone
and the
of you.
80s. The 80s references in the shows and everything is really good. And just on the note of Vecna, something else I really like, obviously way too late now, but spoilers, you assholes.
Yes.
So, and we're going to jump around. We'll probably do some ordering, but I'm also just going to jump because Fraser was talking about Vecna. Something I fucking love about the final episode of this, final episode of this part is that the full reveal of Vecna recontextualizes the whole show. Because now you understand why from season 1 the Demogorgon was trying to kill El. Like it recontextualizes why all these things from the Upside Down are attacking 11 because they're being literally sent or controlled or commanded by Vecna, and his reasonings are revealed and explained in the final episode of this season. And just it puts all the other seasons into a new context.
It also
really fucking cool.
It also clears 11's name for killing everybody in that facility in the lab, because for a long time, I mean, everyone just assumed, right, that she went on a tear and killed everybody else, but it wasn't her at all, actually. And I like that this season. I really like that this season does this thing where they have Vecna and his other name is 1, right, and you have 11, double 1. She's the hero per se, and then he's the villain, but it's not as cut and dry as that, because earlier in the season you see when she doesn't have her powers anymore. It's kind of how it starts off, and it's kind of how season 3 ended, where Elle lost her ability to use any of her powers, so she's just trying to live a normal life now. Hopper's gone. They assume he's dead, and the high school students are bullying her. She gets into a point where this fucking annoying ass character named Angela, she's one of the most hated characters on all of TV and all of cinema, kind of like what the one professor in Harry Potter is. Just like everyone hates this character a lot, but she ends up hitting her with a fucking skate, like a rollerblade. And it's a moment where you're not exactly like, yes, you could be like, okay, that bitch got what was coming to her. Like Angela got what was coming to her, but it's also a moment where Elle doesn't feel good about it. And so you as a viewer start to kind of feel bad about it too, because she hit the shit out that girl and there was like blood all over her face. And yes, to me, I'm a person, I choose violence. You keep fucking with me and I hit you back, or I just decide to choose violence and physically hit you. It is what it is from where I come from. But at the same time, right, at the same time though, I get that doesn't make Elle feel good. And that's the difference between her and 1, where like, he uses violence as like his primary way to deal with what he considers to be a problem, which is all humans.
I don't know, it made me feel good. I was like, hit her again.
Yeah.
Like
I will
honestly, the girl was so like Angela like bullies Elle and all that stuff, and I'm just like, all right, that's like, I'm like, this girl's a bitch. But
it was like, Carrie vibes.
It was the moment that she was like, oh, you're gonna cry, you can't cry to the teacher again, and she's like, were you gonna cry to your dead dad? Oh wait, you can't do that either. When she said that, I was like, you can't say that to people. You can't say that to people.
You can't say that to people in any year.
You might get killed like saying something like that to someone, honestly.
Especially in 2022. So honestly, as I was watching this season, and they give a disclaimer before the season even starts about how the children who recently passed away in a horrific terrorist attack, they gave a disclaimer to saying that this season was filmed over a year before that actually happened, because this season's focused around one thing that's really controversial, is just like bullying, like cyberbullying, and just bullying in general. And then how kids can react to that with acts of violence. So Elle reacts to bullying with an act of violence. Now, granted, she doesn't go on a killing spree, but she did try to use her powers on Angela at one point. We don't know the severity of what she was going to do. Maybe she was just going to make the girl pee on herself like she did before with a bully, Or maybe she was going to go straight up fucking one and cripple the girl and make her eyes pop into the back of her head. Like we don't know in that moment, as angry as she was, we don't know what was going to happen when she put her hand out. Yeah.
I was going to say, it's funny on one end though. It's funny. By it's funny, I mean it's fucking sad. And that I saw the disclaimer at the start of the season, and I was like, "Oh, that's nice." But then at the same time, I was like, "Well, there's a shooting every week, unfortunately, in America."
There is.
Like that disclaimer is just like it doesn't matter when. Like you filmed it a year ago, I guarantee there was a shooting a year ago around that time. Anyway.
And there will be next year. If somebody watches it next year,
it will be next year. It's
it
just
will
like
be.
an
It will be
unfortunate,
relevant.
Yeah, I think prior to the one that has everybody talking about it, there have been 23 other school shootings just this year.
Just this year.
So
so unfortunately, like that disclaimer is like it should just be for all school shootings, not just the one in Texas.
Yeah,
but I guess that they were trying to be sensitive to the fact that this particular shooting was with kids. They're in school and it's with children. Because we had the one. Also, it was sad to say, it was like in a supermarket and it was a bunch of old people. And that really sucked too. It's just like, but this show, because it focuses around children in school, and you see how bullying. I was reading comments on YouTube videos and comments in general about the Stranger Things season 4, and they were saying, why do bullies in shows have to be so exaggerated? And I'm like, hold up. I went to school, like I was a kid once, and bullies were really fucking horrible in general when I was in school. So when Angela was just being herself, like just being an asshole the whole time, I've seen kids be like that in my days in school. Like that's not.
So I was going to say, that's one of the points I want to say is that I agree. I'm like in the middle there. So something that did bother me, like one of the few like negatives I have was that I felt like it not just it makes sense. Like you'll have like a bully, right? But the way the entire school just fucking hated her, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like
that part is a bit much.
Ridiculous that the entire school treats her like a pariah, and there's like no established reason. Like in real life, that can happen, but it happens as a result of like you getting caught jerking off in public. Like it happens as a result of you becoming a pariah.
Not always, just like though.
You existing.
Sometimes I've even seen this in the Yu-Gi-Oh community where certain people are ostracized just for being different or being whatever they are, right? And they get teased to an extent that's just not okay. And a lot of us have taken part in that type of thing. And it's really fucked up because if something were to happen, like if an act of violence were to happen, all of us would be having the same sentiment, like, oh, I didn't know that he was going to freak out like that and react to it like that. We were just joking, that type of thing. But you just never know, especially nowadays, how people are going to react to intense levels of bullying. That
she honestly deserved that skate to the face, though.
Don't get me wrong. Again,
she deserved that shit.
I don't disagree with the skate to the face, but that it can go further than that, especially with the accessibility of weapons now. Like Stranger Things, guns are not a big part of the show, even though they did spend a good amount of it trying to find them in the season.
Yeah.
But guns aren't a big part of it.
I also thought it was funny though how like after she got a skate to the face, everyone's like, "Oh my god, how? What? Why?" And I'm like, "Y'all know why?"
That's the thing.
See,
that's what I'm talking about.
I would have been the person in the back that was like, "Bitch had it coming."
Bitch had it coming.
Just as she was crying, just in my head, like seeing that scene over and over again. Every time she cries, I like in the back of my head, I just imagine someone in the back being like, "Shut the fuck up."
Yeah,
I really do like when bullies get their comeuppance. Like I'm a big fan of that. The part that kind of hurt was that Elle was hurt by it, And that made me a little sad because she didn't feel good about it and she was crying. Also, shout out to Millie Bobby Brown. Her acting and Sadie Sink's acting in this season were both phenomenal. Elle cried in damn near every scene she was in this entire season, and she did such a fantastic job of conveying emotion. And I love the way Elle speaks. I love the way she was presenting her little project about Hopper and like her dad being a hero. I love how nervous she is getting in front of a class because all kids have problems with public speaking in general. I related a lot to Elle's character this season and just feeling like a bit of an outcast because I was a nerd when I was younger. Like even the guys when they're talking about playing D&D and how they're essentially ostracized for it. Like you have Lucas pretending that he's not into that. Excuse me. Lucas pretending that he's not really into something that he loves. Like that would be like me pretending like I'm not into Yu-Gi-Oh because it's not considered cool, and it wasn't when I was in school. I relate to like a lot of the things that they showed in this season, especially as you get older. There's just so many instances of a relatability to being a kid and what it felt like, the bullying, being different, being in certain nerd clubs, and liking things that people who are into just regular, I don't know, whatever regular quote, I'm using the quotations here, but whatever regular teenagers are into.
It did a good job. I really liked Eddie, how he was the one who's like, he fully embraces being a nerd, and he's like, I'm fucking weird, and you guys got to deal with it.
I love that. Also, can I just say this? When they first introduced Eddie, it's in a cafeteria, and he's a wild one. He has really long hair. It looks like he's definitely a fan of Metallica and things like that. It's the 80s. But everyone in that fucking cafeteria was no younger than 28 years old. Those high school students were old as shit. In fact, Eddie's actor is almost 30. And I'm sorry, I don't know if it's because I guess the glamour of Hollywood is just like it doesn't work on me. I can see his age. I can actually see the age of pretty much everyone in the show. So like a lot of these kids, and this is one of the problems I actually have. This is one of the few problems I have with the season. And it's just nitpicky because of COVID extending the season by an extra year, so like everyone aged further than they actually expected on the onset of when they first started filming season 1. Everyone's much older now. They're way older than Elle said that I think less than a year has passed in season 3. But the growth spurt that every kid has had is so extreme that they all just look way younger. You could tell that they're all pretty much like adult age, and then the people around them are much older, like Henry and the girls, like Robin and all them. You could just tell they're not even slightly teenagers, especially Eddie. Eddie looks way too old to me.
It's what I call the One Tree Hill effect.
Is that a thing in One Tree Hill?
Back in the days of One Tree Hill and Dawson's Creek and shit like that, all of those actors that were playing
old
characters that were in high school were like 28. And you knew it. You knew that.
And you know what though? I'm not mad at it. Like I said, it's a nitpicky thing because if you remember Grease, the movie Grease, one of the most famous movies ever. Everyone in that movie's old as shit. Like, look at John Travolta. Look at all his friends and their little gang and group. They're old as fuck. Like no one in that movie is a teenager. No one in that movie is actually a high school student's age. But they, it's kind of one of those things where you just accept it for what it is. So as I was watching Stranger Things, I was like, this kind of works in their favor in a comedic kind of way because old 80s movies had full adult playing teenagers. So it kind of worked in that weird way, but I couldn't help but then I'm like, Eddie is not. They did say he got left back though. They said he got left back a couple times.
They said he got left back a few times.
That's something that
Eddie
I did
is legit 21. Like
that's something I did like because he does look old, but he makes it clear. Like he says something like,
"This is the year.
This is my year." He's been like a senior. He's been a senior for like 3 years or 4. Yeah, like he's been in high school twice.
Yes.
Yeah, so he looks older, but he is older.
He is actually older. So I do like that. Even though in real life, do they kick you out of high school if you get to a certain age?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think you do get kicked out. Like if you don't graduate by the time you're 20, I think you get kicked out.
Yeah, because I feel like it'll start to get weird when you become, let's say, if you got left back 3 times. Most people graduate at 18, so if you got left back 3 times, you can become 21. In high school would be wild.
Yeah.
But anyway, Eddie's a great character. I didn't like him at first, of course. I just naturally thought he was a bit over the top, a bit too cartoony.
Yeah, I like him pretty much immediately.
You and him are very similar, so I'm not surprised about that. I saw you in him when he got on top of the table and was just being ridiculous. But as the season goes on, I really enjoyed him as a person and just like his antics, and also that he's unapologetically a nerd. And obviously that resonates with me. Like the fact that they love their D&D, even when they asked him to move the game night one night, he was not for that shit at all. He's like, absolutely not.
Okay, now my first impression of Eddie, especially because like their first actual interaction with him was asking him to move the game night.
Yeah.
As someone that plays D&D pretty heavily,
you guys actually play.
We play a lot.
My first thought was, this is a very toxic D&D group.
So it's not actually like that?
This groups that are like that.
This is a very toxic D&D environment because, like, if someone has to cancel or something because of something, if you're like, I'm not gonna move the game, never ever, like, It's easy. It's easy when it comes to D&D because it's a group of different people with different opinions. Usually they're not all like friends, but they play together. Like they're all friendly with each other. It's really easy for like a group of D&D players to all kind of turn inward and become really toxic. So like I think there's just kind of like an unspoken rule that everyone tries to be very like amicable and like very like accommodating just in general.
What I think is interesting though, because I agree with you, especially in the modern era, but I think given the time frame of it being the 80s, and from the stories I've heard, obviously I wasn't alive, then the people that played D&D took it even more seriously. So it was like, no, this is D&D night. I don't give a fuck that you're playing basketball. Fuck basketball. You know what I mean? And like the environment at that time frame was a bit different.
Yeah, because the internet doesn't exist. So there's not many different things that you can do with your time in the 80s as far as entertainment goes. I imagine D&D was a really, really big deal. Like a lot of people who I know who play it now are kind of leisure with it. You know, you guys do have a schedule, but like you said, that schedule can easily move in 2022 and it's not a big deal. But in the 80s, that wasn't the case. I also like that they show how it was perceived by the media and the news in the 80s as being some kind of satanic, demonic thing. Yeah, and it reminded me of when I was younger playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I remember someone from my mom's church or my grandma's church said, "Oh, you shouldn't be letting that boy play with those cards. That's witchcraft."
Yep.
The same thing with Harry Potter. That was also demonic.
Same thing with Pokemon. Same thing with Pokemon.
Yeah.
I will not. I've told this story multiple times on the podcast, but I'll just never forget. I had a friend who had the front stickers of his cartridges peeled off, and I asked him, "Hey, why'd you do that to your cartridges?" And he was like, "Because I think he said he's, if I remember, Jehovah's Witness," and he was like, because Pokemon is evolution, I'm not allowed to play Pokemon." I was like,
which is
wild. I will never peel this fucking sticker off my red and blue. You got me fucked up.
But something that Eddie does say that I really, really love, and for people that don't play D&D, this is 100% true. After Erica rolled that D20 and she got a nat fucking 20, and they beat Vecna, they beat the campaign, and Eddie was like, "That is why we play." And I was like, "That is why we play, for those moments."
It seemed like they got genuine D&D people in on their writing for that whole aspect of the show, because that did seem genuine. And I've never played D&D myself, but I've attended many games for no reason at all other than I wanted to hang out with my best friend longer. And I think I did bring this up on the podcast, but I used to go with him to like the Amtrak station that would stay open all night, and he would meet up with a group of people at the station, and they would just play from midnight until the sun came up. So around 7 a.m., 8 a.m., they would play D&D, and I would just be there listening to the story, falling asleep, playing with my Yu-Gi-Oh cards, just doing stuff while they play D&D all night. But when somebody rolled the 20, if I was dozing off, that shit would wake me up.
and you know, how serious it always, like, it always just comes to happen at a time when you need it too.
Yes.
Like, I'll never forget. So the first campaign that we ever played in, it was me, Kenny, and our friend Frost, right? We were fighting these pirates on a boat, and it was bleak. Like that shit, it was like dire situation. We were all like really low on HP. We were about to die, and like Kenny's character was on a plank fighting the boss of the pirates, like toe to toe. And like they were going.
It's a Kenny character, so he ran ahead of everybody else, throwing caution to the wind.
And it was like hit to hit. He's dealing with the boss. Me and our friend Frost's characters are dealing with like the pirates, and like they're going toe to toe, hit to hit, and it was tense. And Kenny rolled a 20, and we were all "Oh shit!" We were like, "That's what we needed." Now the DM screwed us, but in a different universe, like that was a moment that you'll like never forget.
Yeah, it was definitely a moment that soured me, because I rolled a nat 20 and everybody got excited, like, yes, because things weren't going our way, and that was like what we needed to turn it around. And then the DM was just like,
they even show against Vecna, they start off rolling and the rolls aren't good.
Yeah. And so
the rolls are not good at first.
I remember I rolled a nat 20. The DM was like, "Well, he has an ability where he can dodge." I was like, "Oh my god!"
And we were like, "No fucking way!"
I was like, "What just happened?"
But in a different universe, we won that fight.
Side note: so around the same in terms of new characters, a character that I don't necessarily hate, but it's one of those things where I do hate the writing around them, is the basketball star.
Oh my god, the one white kid who's definitely like 28.
First of all, he's not a basketball captain. He is definitely a preacher. He is definitely he is a pastor, man.
Now, I don't know if there's other high schools that allow, but I've never seen, and this happens a lot in like high school shows.
Yes,
my man, he gives like a whole presentation in front of the school. I'm like, what is happening? Like, this doesn't happen. Like, why is this guy talking for this long? And then at the end of the show, when he just like walks into the fucking police meeting and takes over the police meeting and talks to everybody, I was like, this doesn't happen. Like, somebody's got to shut his ass. How?
These shows always have the quintessential jock who's way over the top, way too machismo, way too like hyper masculinity. Everything has to be dealt with violence. They always want to beat somebody up to solve their problem. Like, they always want to jump somebody or find the fucking bat. Like, why is it always a bat with these guys? Like, every single time they find, oh, this guy may have done something, they want to get a bat immediately. It's like the first thing they resort to. I hate those characters. It's not
as bad if you bludgeon them, you know. It's not
Jesus. Bludgeon is a fucked word. That word sounds so bad. Bludgeon. But yeah, there's something I want to talk about during the season. So Elle's storyline is actually extremely sad this season. Right from the beginning, right? So she's lost her powers, but she's also lost her father. She calls him dad. Like, Hopper's gone. She also has this memory of losing her mom as well, right? Like in the lab that they show a couple times during the season. So now Elle has found a dad and he's gone. She has no mom, no dad. Her boyfriend doesn't even live close to her anymore. He has to come visit. And she's trying to, with the help of Will, trying to assimilate into high school. And that's not going well at all. So much so, and this is the saddest thing to me, that she has resorted to lying to Mike when he does visit her. And something about that to me is so fucked up, because you see how much it means to her for it to seem like she actually can make friends on her own and like get along well with kids and live a normal life, because she knows that's what Mike will want for her. So she's trying to pretend as though that's how her life is going. And it's not going that way. Will knows it. He sees what she's doing and he's like, yo, like, Mike doesn't deserve this. Why are you lying about, like, these people are not your fucking friends. In fact, they're the exact opposite of your friends. And then the bullies take that chance and make it into a whole Carrie night. It was very reminiscent of the movie Carrie. If you've never seen it, basically this girl goes on prom. She's a little bit of an outcast as well. She's teased and bullied a lot. And on her prom night, they dump pig's blood over her. She kills everybody with superpowers, just like Elle. She has telekinesis. So it's a very famous movie back in the 80s. And yeah, it's actually pretty good. But this entire first 2 episodes reminded me of the movie Carrie. And I think they kind of drew from that, because they even throw something on her that looks like shit. They pretty much...
Pretty sure it was like a milkshake.
Yeah, I think they throw a milkshake on her.
But I mean, this season, they actually did a really good job with like the reference and kind of something like, okay, the first season doesn't really do this, because the first season has like some 80s references, but it's not like overbearing. By the third season, it was insufferable. But
dude,
but something
quick, before you say, like, I guess in terms of the third season and the unbearable references, one of the things that, like, I was just like, all right, I'm zoning the fuck out. The goddamn Terminator stand-in. There's a fucking guy in the third season that's literally just the Terminator, and he just like walks everywhere he goes, and he just like,
the Russian guy,
dude,
yeah,
so overbearing. It's like, oh my god, like, I don't care. This plot line makes no sense. It's so stupid.
Yeah,
it's just go ahead.
It's why I'm so glad that like this season they actually really gave a lot of thought behind a lot of the references and a lot of the callbacks, because like aside from Carrie, they reference some. They reference like a bunch of horror movies. Yeah, there's like a point, I'm pretty sure like Dustin references Pulp Fiction. Like they did some like really meaningful callbacks. The most meaningful one is, you know, the end of the episode that made everybody cry with Kate Bush. Stranger Things has been famous for having like popular 80s songs in it, and having Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush be in the moment that it was, like, I was like, this actually gave like such a deeper meaning to them having this song in the show.
Yeah. So
hey, remember that song from the 80s? You know,
yeah, because that's what it felt like before. Whereas this song had meaning to the actual context of what was happening in the show, as opposed to just saying, hey, this is an 83 song and the show is taking place right now in 83.
Yeah.
So I get what you mean. I actually want to talk about some of the build up to Dear Billy, episode 4, where they do the running up the hill thing. So the whole premise of the season is that episode 1, there's this girl named Chrissy who has an eating disorder, and she's been cursed by Vecna, right? So that means that she has a couple days to live. She's being haunted every time she gets some alone time or her mind starts to wander. She experiences these really hellish visions of a grandfather clock and like a table of food with maggots all over it, all types of horrible shit, just being tortured. And then she snaps out of it. And then after about a week, you die from it. So at the end of the episode, her and Eddie are together. She's trying to buy some hard drugs from Eddie. Eddie's a provider, apparently. And as he's about to sell to her, she gets cursed by vecna. She gets lifted into the air. And honestly, this shit took me by surprise. This is where I realized this season was going to be very dark because I did
by surprise.
I did not see this coming at all. Like Stranger Things has had season 1, I believe the Winona Ryder's love interest, the cop guy, I forget his name, but he ends up getting killed. And that shocked me in like season 1 or 2, whenever that happened. Like you see the Demogorgon or Demodog things, they like overwhelm him and just kill him. And that took me by surprise back then. Then that one girl dies in the pool, and they kind of reference that later on in the season. But I just wasn't ready for Chrissy's death at the end of episode 1, when she flew up into the air and like her eyes are rolling in the back of her head, and then you see Vecna start to put his claws into her face in the other world, in the upside down. And then in the real world, as Eddie's looking at it happen, her fucking bones start snapping and moving backwards, and her jaw breaks and like it's just so. And then her eyeballs, they kind of like get pushed into the back of her head, and then she just falls lifeless to the ground in front of them. That shit was so over the top for me. And whoever did the effects on that are very well done, because the sounds of it, the sound of the human body breaking like that, and then just how merciless it was. It's a child, so you're watching an actual teenager be mutilated. Like the deaths are horrible for the children. So honestly,
I'm glad it was shocking for you, or shocking for most people probably, because I had, at this point, I had been looking at dead kids for months. In having worked on the show. So when I saw Chrissy's like limbs get snapped, I was like, oh, that's the gag of the season. I was like, okay. I was like, everyone that dies is gonna die from getting snapped.
Do you want to real quick give some background on how you like got into? Because I know when you first got this job, you didn't even realize you were working on Stranger Things.
Funny enough, okay. So I'm a visual effects artist by profession. Specifically, I'm a compositor, which means I'm the guy that gets rid of the green screen, replaces it with the CG dinosaur, all that stuff. So the very first shot that I worked on of this show, usually like I've been doing it for like over a decade. So by this point, every show is the same.
Damn, nigga, you old. Meanwhile, I've been an accountant for over 10 years myself.
Old bitter artist. So like the first shot I saw of this, I was like, oh, hey, isn't that Dustin from Stranger Things? And I was like, oh, okay, like he's in the show. The code name for the show, which is all over the internet now, is Toriko. So I was like, oh, whatever this show Toriko is. And I was like, so Dustin's in this show, whatever it is. And then like I saw a shot with Robin, and I was like, oh, they're both in the show. That's like whatever the show's about. I was like, it's so interesting, huh? And then like it was like the shot of all of them getting out of the car, and I was like, all the kids from Stranger Things are in this show, and I was like, oh, it's Stranger Things.
This is just
I was like, oh,
Things.
I'm working on the new season of Stranger Things.
Now, in your
really
defense,
just didn't care. I didn't care because, like, keep in mind, for me, I was coming out of 6 months of working on a spinoff of the show Power. So like it was all bullets and muzzle flashes and gunshot wounds. So I was just happy for anything that wasn't that. So I was like, whatever this show is, cool. And I was
That's
like,
so funny.
In your defense, the movie the rework of it that came out in like 2018, that movie has some of the Stranger Things cast in it. And honestly, without comparing them too much, if you look at both of those movies, like just scenes from them, you could mistake mistake the movie It from 2018 for Stranger Things, because they're on bikes a lot of the time. It definitely takes place in the 80s, right? So like it has the same exact atmosphere so I could see, I was like, oh, this isn't so obvious initially, but then after you see too many characters, it's like, well, I
was just like, wow, all the kids from Stranger Things are in this show called Toriko, whatever that's about.
Do you know how many days that was? Was that more than one day?
It was like almost a week. It took me like a week to realize I was working on
But so going back, we'll talk more about the development as we get to like some of the episodes and shots you worked on. But going back to the Chrissy thing, that the end of that first episode was definitely surprising. I was watching that with Jaden, and like when that happened, I looked at Jaden, and that's my little brother, and he looked at me, and we were
He's
both
12,
like,
right?
Yeah, he's 12. We were like, oh shit.
Yeah, man.
It was crazy. And
I just didn't see that coming. I'm gonna be honest. Like, it's not like I haven't seen kids be killed before, because the movie It, for example, kids get killed primarily, that actually exclusively in that movie. And in Stranger Things, they have, gone that far as well. Like I said, that one girl, I forget her name, I feel bad, but
Barbara?
she died in that pool like in season 1 or whatever.
The one that everyone forgets about, Barbara. Well, everyone in the show forgot about her anyway.
Yeah. She died as well. So it's not like kids haven't died in Stranger Things, but it's really how gruesome it was. It was brutal, man. It was fucking brutal.
Because my first exposure to it was so first we worked on episode 5, and then we moved to episode 7, and we pretty much did like the entire like lab scene of all of the kids being slaughtered. And I had the job of going through and like setting up all of the shots that we were doing. So I pretty much saw the entire sequence. And as I'm looking at it, and like I'm looking at like the reference that Netflix sends us and everything, and I'm just like, this is dark. I'm like, damn, like all these, I'm like, all these kids are like gonna be dead with like snapped limbs and like gouged out eyes. I was like, what the fuck is gonna happen? So like I couldn't like say anything to you guys, but I was like, it's gonna be dark. I was like, this season is gonna be dark. So at the end of episode 1, when Chrissy got like vecna'd, I was like, oh, this happens for the entire season. I was like, this is just gonna happen the entire
episode 2. The one journalist kid gets fucking off the same exact way. And I was like, God damn, this is going to be a thing at the end of every episode.
Same. By the end of episode 2, I thought each episode was going to end with somebody getting like destroyed. From working on the show and watching all this stuff, the thing with, working on, when you watch the show or before you watch the show, did you feel as though the spoilers that you got from working on the show had any impact on your enjoyment of it? Or do you feel like it almost made you excited to see certain things or, whatever?
Both, because the whole beginning mystery of like Professor or Dr. Brenner being like, "Elle, what have you done? What have you done?" Almost immediately, I was like, "No, she didn't do it. It was one." And I was like, "And one is the orderly," because like I knew that.
Yeah.
Because like one of the shots that I worked on was them kind of like doing the telekinetic thing at each other.
Yeah.
So like, just from like reading the notes and stuff like that, I was able to like piece it together. It doesn't like say it like explicitly or anything, but like there's a few times they do refer to him as one, like the client does, the client being Netflix. So I was able to kind of piece a few things together, but surprisingly, what I didn't put together is that he was Vecna. I should have and probably there was a part of me that didn't want to put it together because I wanted to experience it. But like with all of those clues, I really should have been able to put together like, oh, he's one and one is Vecna.
I do like the way the show. So from a perspective of somebody who's just a viewer, right? I do like the way the show hid that one was Vecna. We don't even get introduced to the guy who is Vecna until pretty late into the show, I want to say, and late is like episode 5, I guess. But when he's introduced, he pretends to be kind of an aide to Elle, and he has an ulterior motive, which you can sense as a viewer, but you can't. I don't think it's that obvious that he is Vecna. And then you get the episode 4, Dear Billy, which in this episode, there's a lot of things that happen, but one of the best things that happens is the whole Victor Creel backstory. Yeah. So as the cops and everyone in the town are looking for the killer of Chrissy and the other reporter kid who died in episode 2, they're trying to figure out who killed him. And they're saying this resembles exactly what happened years ago with Victor Creel. Victor Creel's like this murderer guy.
Side note, the guy that played Victor Creel is the guy that played Freddy Krueger.
Yes, very, very cool little cameo right there, and his eyes are all clawed out and everything like that. So they have him playing a Victor Creel, and they give his backstory because this happened a while ago in the same town of Hawkins where, people ended up dead with the same exact body breaking and the eyes being gouged out or pushed into the back of their head. This really gruesome death. It resembles exactly what he did. So the girls decide they want to go visit him, and he gives the backstory of what happened. And in the backstory, so I went and watched episode 4 again just to enjoy it because it's my favorite episode of all of Stranger Things. And as I was watching it, I noticed that even the production and the direction of the episode, they do hide the little boy who ends up being one. They don't show him die the way they showed the mom. You know, the mom, he kills the mom blatantly on screen, right? Like she lifts up into the air, all her bones break, but you don't see his eyes moving in a way that shows that he's the one doing it. And then the daughter also, you see her dead too. And then he mentions that like his son was essentially pronounced dead a week later. Like he fell into a coma, yep. He's pronounced dead a week later. It didn't occur to me to think like, the son, he was pronounced, because they tell you blatantly that he died a week later. So I just took it for that. Like, I didn't think anything of it.
On that note, so I thought, because in that episode, he talks about how like my son was like, he says like my son was like more in tune with the weird or whatever.
Yes, he says he was sensitive.
I basically thought his son ended up in a will situation. I thought he wasn't dead and maybe he ended up going to the upside down.
Oh, okay.
I thought like it was like a kid trapped in the upside down. I think they put together that the son was back now, obviously.
Yeah, I think it was too early, episode 4, to know all that.
But I did legit think the son was still alive and still was connected to the story. I just wasn't sure how yet. And then when it comes to like one himself, I pretty early was like, is this guy one? Like the guy that was talking to her, I was like, is this guy actually one? But once again, I didn't connect that he's Vecna or the little boy. It was like really interesting to kind of connect certain things. Like, I think this is related to this, and like be almost there, but not quite there. And then when everything ends up being connected, you're like, holy shit, it's like webbed together. Like it ends up being so cool the way it ends up all falling together.
Yeah, I think it was so. The part that made it really clear to me that he was going to be one was when he blatantly told Elle about one, and she said, "What happened to him?" And he said, "That's a story for another day, but it doesn't end well."
Yeah.
And he kind of looks at us. Oh, okay. So I see where it's going with that. I was like, he's definitely one. Then they showed him being tased and everything like that with no context to it. Like he was just being tased. And I was like, okay. And then like Elle kind of caught a glimpse of that, and then she runs away, and then you see the guy come out the lab. So I was like, okay, there's something going on. I still didn't think that he was going to be evil though. I thought, I don't know. He gave me weird vibes, but not like I'm gonna kill the entire ward. If you free me, I'm gonna kill everybody in here, including the kids. He didn't give me that. He did not give me that.
I knew he was going to be on some shit. I didn't think he was going to be the one that killed everybody.
Me either. I did not see him killing everybody in that place.
When we got to the last episode, it's funny because we were watching the last episode, and Jaden was like, I don't think Elle did it. He was like, he was legit saying like, he was saying like, he's basically saying like he doesn't think. I was like, I don't know, Jaden. I think she probably did, because like we know that she didn't have a good control of her powers when she was younger.
Right, and they showed her getting bullied real bad.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. I think she probably did, and but at that point, I did think one was like going to be on some shit, but I did not think he was going to be the one that fucking kill everybody.
Yeah, he was like, wait here, and then he just started offing everybody. He was blatantly trying to turn Elle against like the father, right? Like he was, like, he can't control you, so he tried to kill you the other day. That's why all the cameras were off. That's why those kids were out.
After she took the suppressor out of his neck, though, I was like, like, it's going to get bad. I was like, I started to feel it there. I was like, oh no, this is getting bad.
I think that part to me was when things started to become a little bit more obvious as far as him being not who he said he was, right? Like the second he asked, like he said, "Oh, this thing is a tracker, and like it won't let me, leave this place or whatever. He'll know." And I was like, "Yeah," and you're soliciting this kid's help to get it out of you.
Another little interesting clue is because he says that Papa calls it Soteria, and for anyone that's a mythology buff, that would have been a giveaway, because Soteria is, I believe, the Greek goddess of like divine protection or something like that. Oh, like she's supposed to protect you. Yeah. So like he named it that deliberately. So like if you knew that, you'd be like, Soteria is like the Greek goddess of protection. Why would you need something called that in your neck, right? Like, so.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I didn't know. I like the name of it though, Soteria. That sounds really cool. It sounds really, anime-esque or whatever. But as soon as she took that shit out his neck, I knew. I said, "Oh, he has powers." I felt it. And then obviously when they got to the hallway in the lab and all of the security guards came up, I said, yeah, before he even started using his powers, you just knew he had powers.
Yep.
Like the second
it doesn't help. it doesn't help that like in every one of these scenarios, the security guards are always assholes.
Yes.
Like they're always just like, ha, we're sadists. Time to electrocute some kids.
Yeah.
Like, and you're just like, I guess
if you resist,
don't feel
this will
bad
be worse
about them getting their necks snapped, but you know.
Yeah, and they showed that he's very powerful from the gate because he did his own little neck snap by just twisting his own neck. He did a little, he just kind of moved his neck to the side and then neck snap. I was like, oh, so he's outrageous. But I guess they make it very clear too that she's more powerful than him, which is really cool because that's going to be necessary.
She's also outrageous. It's so interesting, like the whole build up to it, the Victor Creel stuff, the Vecna, and
he trained her too.
Oh my god! And what's interesting is like they start giving the hints of because Papa, I don't know his real name, but when
Dr. Brenner,
there's the part where he's saying like, when you're using your powers, you're not allowed to use any emotion. You're not allowed to be angry or anything. And that's like obviously in response to like whatever the failure of one was, right?
Yeah.
And then
one was using his powers out of anger for people in general. Again, he's just like a fucking, I don't know. He just hates all humanity. There's a name for people like that. I mean,
he's just actually. I wonder what that because he believes that he's kind of above it all, and that we disrupt the natural order, which we do. Humans do disrupt the natural order of nature.
And he's taking a liking to Black Widows.
So, he was like a walking video essay in a sense. But
yeah, he's really cool as a character. I just like that the villain has a backstory, was human at one point, and also was responsible for the massacre, also is Vecna, also went to the Upside Down. Like he trained L, and also the 1 versus 1 or 1 versus 11 thing is really cool to me. He said, I'm just like you. It's just a lot of cool things there. And then L rejects the fact that she's just like him because he wants her to join him in purging the world of people. And she's like, no, like I'm not doing that shit. I'm not with that. Like, people do treat me bad or whatever. Bad things happen, but for whatever reason, Elle still has this moral compass about killing people that she's just not exactly with, even from a young age. And she fights against him from the very beginning. And at first I was like, well, she's just going to get bodied, right? But like, you kind of know how the story ends already because this is all in the past. So clearly something went right. But I didn't know if somebody might have saved her or something. But no, she does it on her own. She actually just beats him 1v1. She just beats him.
And then she's a fucking plane walker because she can just send you to a different dimension, which raised some very interesting questions about, so then what is the Upside Down? Like, where did she send him? How did she send him? Did she create that dimension?
Yeah,
or was it just always like a space that existed?
I don't think she created a dimension, but
I don't think so either.
She definitely ripped a tear in the fabric of space-time to like send them there.
But then even more interestingly is like, so then is the Upside Down because Vecna shaped it in that image?
Yeah, so I have a question too, because one of the coolest things is that, so we see him getting transformed all Palpatine like from Star Wars. He gets force electrocuted a bunch of times. He goes bald. His skin gets all nasty and fleshy. And it's all because L sent him to this dimension. But we also find out in season 4 that the Upside Down has been frozen on the same day 3 years ago. November 6, 1983. And they're in 1986 during the show. So they go back to the one girl's house and she's like, yo, this shouldn't be here. This shouldn't be here. I don't have a gun yet in the Upside Down. And then she realizes this is 3 years ago. She finds her diary, and the last entry on her diary, which she wrote in every single day. The last entry was like 3 years ago. So you find out that the Upside Down is actually frozen to the day when like L opened that portal or Will got taken into the Upside Down. It's been stuck in that exact day this entire time, that just poses a lot of questions about the Upside Down.
And then also like, and I'm still waiting for this to be explored. And it seems like Volume 2 is going to explore it. Like, what is the Mind Flayer? Like, I have a pretty good idea of what the Demogorgon is, but I really want to know like what the Mind Flayer is and what his purpose is, because I thought that the Mind Flayer was the big bad, and thought that every sequential season after that was going to kind of explore what the Mind Flayer's purpose is and like what they are. And so
even so Dustin, go ahead, Kenny.
I was going to say, I think you were about to say it too. Even Dustin says that he thinks Vecna is one of the Mind Flayer's soldiers.
Right.
Five-star general.
Yeah, but as we understand it, if I'm to understand what happened correctly, Vecna is the boss, and the Mind Flayer was essentially working for Vecna.
Who knows?
So
I don't know.
we don't know, because Dustin has been pretty spot on with everything else he said, almost like he's a narrator of the season, right? When they were playing D&D and they were talking about Vecna, Eddie and Dustin and everybody, like when they were talking about Vecna, they basically were talking about the villain of the season, which is really cool how they use D&D to explain the villain. But then that doesn't necessarily mean that they're right. We probably shouldn't take their narration as being truth or 100% fact.
Yeah.
So when he says that if the Demogorgon was his foot soldier, then Vecna is his 5-star general, it could be the other way around. And Vecna is actually right.
Yeah, that's what I think. Only because in the sense of Vecna and what we've learned from him in this, like Vecna has actual motivations in being one. He has actual motivations against Hawkins and against the real world. Whereas the Mind Flayer, at least at this moment, we don't know what their motivations would be. And, but Vecna being an actual person from the original world, it ties all the motivations together and why they're sending monsters to this world and etc. and why they're attacking Hawkins. So
yeah, and Vecna didn't start acting until Elle lost her powers, which is really cool too, because he knew that she's the one thing that could really stop him.
Yep.
I mean, we know that what we do know about the Mind Flayer, whatever it is that it wants to get into our world and it wants to essentially dominate, dominion over, which is interesting. Like I've always found it interesting the way that they like correlate the monsters in the show to the monsters in D&D. They're not 1-to-1, obviously. Demogorgon in D&D is like a demon prince, so that's different. But he is like a big bad fucking scary thing, and they have yet to kill that one Demogorgon, so I don't know, maybe it's spot on. But the Mind Flayers in D&D are a race of sentient creatures that basically take over other intelligent creatures and make them their slaves. So they jump from dimension to dimension to do that.
So like how the guy, what is his name, Billy? Season 3, like he got his mind taken over. He was going around basically recruiting people for the Mind Flayer or whatever. Right,
because that's what that's what they do. So like I'm assuming that is what the Mind Flayer wants to do. They are a hive mind. So I'm assuming that they just want to be like, humans are ours now. And at that point in time in season 2, I had assumed that whatever the Upside Down was just a different dimension that existed that probably pulled from other dimensions, like pieces of it, and the Mind Flayer like took over basically these other like species from these different dimensions and were controlling them, because that's what Mind Flayers do.
Like he just dominated and was like, okay, now all of this shit is mine now, and now I need to add Earth, the right side up to it too.
Right, and that's kind of what I assumed in what happened. But now, like with the existence of Vecna, like it doesn't like contradict it. I'm hoping that like it somehow all comes full circle.
So we know that part 2 is coming out July 1st or something like that, and it's only 2 episodes.
Those 2 episodes are long.
I thought it was going to be that was a little disappointing. I thought part 2 was going to be another 7 episodes. Then I heard it was only 2, which it's still fine. They have a focused vision, and I'm still excited to see it, because so far, like I said, this has been an amazing season.
Really has.
So these next 2 episodes, how long are they supposed to be? Like
these next 2
hours.
These next 2 episodes in total are the same length as 6 regular episodes.
Wait, what?
Yeah, because the first episode is going to be an hour and 40 minutes, and the second episode is going to be 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Yeah, so that's what I heard.
So if you time that out by like 40 minutes each.
Yeah. Oh, then it basically is a whole nother season.
Yes, I don't know why they're doing this though. This thing where they instead of making it more episodes, they're kind of putting a lot of content. And this is another nitpicky thing I have with this season, because the season is not without faults. It's not perfect. It's very good though. Like it's one of my favorite seasons of a show that I've seen, and all of those good things. I think it'll get a lot of accolades for not only the acting, but just the storyline and direction, also the villain being personalized. But I do think that one of the things I just could not stand was how much goes into every episode. It's just a little too much, I think, for me to process. And I did find myself at times, my mind wandering, because it's just a lot. So you had the storyline with Mike going to visit Elle, right? So you have Mike, Will, and Elle together for a bit. Then you have the storyline with like Robin and Henry and all of those people, and then the pothead and like the random guy making pizzas and shit.
The
And you got like
G-plot.
then you got like Lucas and the basketball stuff, and you got the Russian plot with Hopper, which is like, it was comedic relief, but then it was just so over the top at times, and very suspension of disbelief was required to watch any of the Russian scenes, like any of it, because you want me to believe that two regular American people are infiltrating a Russian prison and like actually freeing somebody. It's just a bit much.
I mean,
so it's like, okay,
80s. What do you expect? No,
yeah. But it's like it required a lot of suspension of disbelief, and I'm like, okay, I'm already accepting that demogorgons exist, right? So I can't get too crazy when they're like two Americans infiltrating this Russian prison. But at the same time, so much of it was just like comedy. Like the entire actor, the guy Yuri, like he was ridiculous. And then like I love Murray. Like don't get me wrong, Murray is actually legit to me. I love that he's not a punk bitch. Like he actually used his karate.
Also, Murray's a real one because like Joyce was like, I guess I have to go to Russia to save Hop. And he was like, you mean we're going to Russia to save Hop?
Yeah.
I really like him. Like I genuinely like his character. I think he's actually funny. But then a lot of the stuff that was just happening in Russia to me, a lot of the Hopper stuff just felt like it was crammed into the episodes. Like for example, Dear Billy, my favorite episode 4, it had a lot of like him trying to escape and then he gets recaptured and all that stuff because he got double crossed by Yuri. I just feel like that could have been its own episode.
Yeah,
like
I think, I actually have like the same, like almost the exact same complaint because the G plot with Will and Jonathan and all that is definitely my least favorite plot line.
It is by far the worst plot line of the season. And Argyle is trash. He is the worst he's one of the worst new characters ever introduced. Like he's just like
he does nothing funny.
He's funny because he's high. Like
he does literally nothing for the show. Then, you're right.
Which is a shame because like they could do, because honestly what I was expecting that what they did with Eddie they were going to do with Argyle, and I was expecting that Eddie was going to be a throwaway character.
He does not, like for example, his only the only integral thing he does really is that he is a vehicle for them to have a vehicle to go visit.
Literally, he's their fucking ride.
Literally, when they were getting shot up, he drove them away.
But like, you could have took his character out of the they could have just stole a car. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
he doesn't need to be a character.
He doesn't do anything. Like, he's so fucking bad.
So the scenes,
but I have problems with that entire plot line is just kind of like it's weak to me.
Yeah,
I agree. I agree with you 100%, Anthony. It really felt like it was making the episodes longer, and there's theories that Netflix kind of did it on purpose because I don't know if you guys have heard, but this show, season 4 of Stranger Things, is like the biggest record breaker of Netflix's ever having a premiere weekend. It has the most hours watched ever, right? And when they specifically worded it like that, most hours watched ever, like it broke the record for that. It's like, oh, well, if you make a show that every episode is over an hour long, well, of course, people are going to finish each episode. And you know that Netflix shows get binge watched. And yes, of course, you're going to break the record for most watch hours. It's like if they make a season of Bridgerton and they make the season just longer in general, they just pad it out with nonsense, right? Like if you just put more into it, then yes, it's going to be the most watched hours long show too. And you also can get that by cheesing it.
I would like for people to realize, I don't know if people realize or not, but Stranger Things is the reason why we have all these Netflix shows, all these Netflix movies. It really did start with Stranger Things. Like Netflix was like dipping their toe in the pool a little bit here and there before, but like Stranger Things came out, it was a hit, and then Netflix was like all the way. All these Netflix shows, boom, 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 you're greenlit.
The two earliest shows I remember were Stranger Things and House of Cards.
Yep.
Those were like the two pioneer shows for me. Yes, they were both very good.
Orange New Black was
Orange New Black was huge.
Yeah, I think Orange New Black
that one was
the next big one.
But then like and Orange, even I haven't seen the later seasons, but even like the first 2 seasons of Orange New Black are actually pretty good. Like
I really like them. I like the premise of an all women prison. It's like Oz, but with women. I thought that was really cool.
And then a lot of the Netflix shows after that have just been not good.
Yeah, and like someone told me the other day, they were like Orange New Black, like they were like, yeah, season 7. I was like, that bitch has 7 seasons.
I didn't know it was still even a thing. Like I
don't know if it's ended or still ongoing, but to get back to the original point that I was making,
the weak plots.
So the G plot, I kind of threw that away. Also because I don't really like Mike, and also something
Mike is trash.
I think that Mike is I think that he's not only a bad character, but he's a bad fucking person. But anyway,
oh shit,
he was cool in season 1, but since season 2,
that was
I have
it.
Not
but even in season 1, he was a little bitch. But I don't want to talk about Mike. What I'm really upset about is the way that they've done my boy Will dirty. So
yeah, Will, I know where you're going with this too, Anthony, because this relates to his sexuality is definitely in question for sure, and the show is basically gay baiting, using his character as a way to kind of
it. So okay, so like Will, I am a part of Levitical Plus, which is the LGBTQ community.
I was going to say, you can't just say that.
The LGBTQ plus
community. Like Will, I've had a sabbatical.
Levitical Plus.
Levitical Plus. So I was hoping that they would do something substantial with that part of his character. But instead, they are doing the tired old gay boy pines after straight boy that he likes plot, and I'm so disappointed.
So there's a couple of things hinting at him being homosexual. Early in the season, a girl puts her foot up against his. He looks over at her very nervously. He moves his foot away. He stares straight ahead. There's at the end of season 3, him and Mike and Will get into an argument, and Mike says, "It's not my fault you don't like girls." And I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, you know, you could take that as, well, I've aged to the point where like my puberty kicked in. I like girls now, and you still don't, because you're still stuck in the mindset of a boy who hasn't quite gotten there yet. Or you could take it as what it really probably meant is that, you know, Will likely doesn't actually like girls. And then also when he makes that comment about how Eleven's lying to Mike and he doesn't deserve that, it definitely felt very defensive of Mike.
Yeah.
It felt very like when he said he doesn't deserve that. I was like, oh shit. Like,
and a lot of the editing of like Will looking at
he looks at him is like the long stares.
They've done Will dirty since season 1. Like in season 1, he was barely a part of the plot because like the whole mystery was finding Will, which I like, because I was like, he is a character and not actually being a character, and I was like, that is genius. Like they introduce him in episode 1 of the first season, and like they're all friends, and then their friend goes missing. So Will is like the character. He's a character in that he is not present, and that they're trying to find him. And he kind of gets, you know, like his place gets filled by 11 and so on and so forth. And then in season 2, he gets taken over by the Mind Flayer, which I was like, okay, like there's a little something there. But then like in season 3, Will was like, I just want to play D&D. Can we play D&D, guys? And I was like, yo, I feel that, man. And then they never do. And then Will's like, I don't have any of my friends anymore. And he's like, and I'm gay and I don't really know how to express it or tell anybody. And now in this
season, the 80s, so I get it.
And now in this season, they're like, well, feelings you are going to have are going to be pining after this straight boy who's a piece of shit anyway, and is also your friend. So
in his defense though, Anthony, and I think that you probably can relate to this somewhat too, it's like that is a real thing that happens.
No, it is a real thing. It's a real thing. It's not to say that it doesn't happen. It's just that plot line is tired.
It is tired,
and it's like to the point that it's almost stereotypical. So another Netflix show. I
want to say this on the Will note, and I could be wrong, but he hasn't actually come out yet. And I know a lot of people have been saying that, like, oh, he wants to fuck Mike, right? But in these next 2 episodes, I think obviously there's going to be like the reveal that he's gay. But
I do think they'll reveal it in the next.
He hasn't come out yet, and they're also hyping up this poster. I don't think the poster is going to be like, here's a painting of you and me fucking Mike. You know, like, I don't think he's going to be like, I don't think he's going to be like trying to date Mike, or you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm waiting to see what happens, but
because I don't see how that's going to work logistically.
You are right. They might take my expectation and subvert it. I would be happy if they did. Right now, it seems like they're going for like the lazy.
Because don't they have a gay girl? Isn't
I was going to say Robin. I was going to say they've done a really good job in terms of like gay representation, I think, with Robin's character.
Yeah, Robin and Steve's friendship is fantastic. I love it. Like their friendship is probably my favorite friendship in the show. It's just like, okay, so there's another show on Netflix. Not gonna go too deep into Heartstopper. And they take that same trope of a gay boy having feelings for a straight guy and it being unrequited, and they subvert that. And if you haven't seen Heartstopper, go see it. It's great. It's very heartwarming. But I hope that they don't do Will dirty again. Is my point.
I hope they do something with his character. For people who may be thinking that, this seems like a bit of a stretch. There's also in this season they show him blatantly doing a paper or some kind of research project on Alan Turing. If you don't know who Alan Turing is, you should watch The Imitation Game. But basically, he is the creator of the first computer ever, and he's also a homosexual that was pivotal in World War II, I believe it was. But he basically decoded the German signals. They send signals with this special coding every day, and they switch to coding every single day. And so Alan Turing developed a computer that could decipher it every single day using the common letters in Hail Hitler, because that was put at the end of every single letter. So they sent out these, this is the whole complicated thing. But basically, Alan Turing is a gay guy, and he was chemically castrated back then. So he's like, a very big gay figure in history. And they show Will doing a project on him in the show. So it's like another thing just kind of linking him to homosexuality and that whole thing.
I didn't know that. So stuff like that kind of gives me hope that they're not actually going to do Will dirty.
Yes, I hope so too, Anthony, because they didn't get even with all of these little hints that they've been dropping, like, okay, we get it. They just haven't blatantly come out and said it. And I understand it because as a teenager, like being homosexual and stuff is not the easiest thing to just be like.
And also just figuring out your sexuality when you're that age is already a journey.
It is the 80s. Again, this is a period piece. And in the 80s, it's not as accepted as it is in 2022, right? In 2022, you come out, and honestly, people who come out in 2022 and make it a big spectacle, I'm just like, why? But in the 80s, it is a fucking big deal because
you could actually become the Tom Pariah.
Yeah, I just want to say,
yes.
I love the gif of Will's walk coming out of school. That there's a gif of him just walking with so much sugar. It's so good.
I didn't see this. I did not see this.
It's such a good gif. It's Will walking out of school with the sugariest walk, and I love it. I'm like, go ahead, Will. Do you, baby.
I want to see this gif now.
You guys gotta see it. But something just on that note of it being the 80s, something I really like about the show, and I wasn't gonna necessarily bring it up, but here's something I like, and I'm actually surprised there's not like random racist dudes complaining about it. But I like how
they're too busy bitching about Star Wars.
No, but I like how in the show
they're busy.
It takes place in the 80s, but there are a lot of black characters, but they don't. I don't know. Maybe you guys might have a different opinion.
Yeah, I know. I noticed.
There's not racism in the show. Like,
yeah,
there's just black, and I think that's cool though, because there's always been an excuse for like, well, it's the 80s, so you can't have black people in the show. But it's like, why not? Just like, fuck it, it's still fiction.
Yeah,
so I
we
like
exist.
The fact that
we also just fucking exist, right?
So there's a lot of black people in the show, and they're in prominent positions. They're not. Yes. It's not just like, well, blah blah blah. So that's something I like about the show is that
the leaders of the government and whoever those police are, those special government people, both of the guys were black. I was actually confused on who they were because I'm gonna be honest, they kind of look similar to me. So when the one was getting tortured by the other one, I was like, look. All right,
it really be your own people.
It really be your own. But look, I could not tell them apart that well. And then one of them was really fucking beat up, and I was like, okay, so that's that one. But yeah, they do have black people in position
apart now.
Yeah, I was like, all right, that one's beat up. He's the beat up one.
So you got the bludgeon black guy, and then you got the bleeder black guy.
Listen, I could not tell them apart. I was like, all right, this is
I mean, look, the scenes were dark.
I didn't know if it was Lucas. I was like, oh, is Lucas now?
I didn't know.
Is Lucas now a government lieutenant? Like, when did Lucas become a lieutenant?
Oh shit!
I'm joking, but like, yeah. I do like the fact that the whole thing about black and white isn't a really big deal in the show. They don't go out of their way to make it an issue, even though obviously we know from history in the 80s, it's not the same world we live in now. It's not as inclusive and things like that. So even with, black kids going to the same school as white kids, like that still was a whole thing.
I can appreciate that they hint at it when it's appropriate, like when it would be like, this is the point where it would be addressed.
Yeah.
And otherwise it's just kind of like, black people exist, and we're not going to focus on, like the racial aspect of it, because
honestly, as a black person, it can get kind of tired to just every media we consume to have to deal with our past trauma, right? Like to have to see that on screen. It gets exhausting. It's already enough exhausting stuff going on in reality. So when I watch something like Stranger Things, I don't necessarily want to be reminded of all of the cruelties and things that have happened. So I do like that when I watch the show, I can just enjoy black people and white people existing together and it not being an issue.
It's also not done in a way where it feels like it's dismissing.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. Definitely,
Yeah. Inversely, what does get dismissed a lot is shit that happens in that Russia plot line. So that is the second weakest plot line to me. And I think it really kind of took a bad turn when Hop escaped and then got brought back. And I was like, why are we doing this? Now, like you said, if it was focused on that, if the show were about Hop getting out of a Russian prison and then that happened, it would be acceptable because it would have more of a purpose, I guess. But like as you're watching it and there are all these other plot lines happening, I was just like, wait, he's going back to square one. I was like, move to the next plot line, please.
Yeah, also, can I just say this? They show Hopper getting his ass whipped, his feet broken, like on some Saw type shit.
My man goes through it.
He goes through a lot, but then I noticed that immediately after they show him getting destroyed, he's just up and walking straight and fighting again like it never happened. And that just bothered me too. Like after he broke his foot in like 3 different places with that damn thing on it, the restraint, I was like, okay. And then the next thing they just show him walking through the yard. I was like, what?
They do a small, and I agree with you though, it's not really acceptable. But they do a small thing to try to explain it away where they quickly show that like when he's taking his boot, like he has it wrapped and like stabilized.
Yeah.
And so like that's supposed to make you go like, oh, well, that's why he can walk around because he's stabilized.
And you're
like, sprained my ankle. Bro, I have sprained my ankle, and let me just tell you, a simple sprained ankle, which is far less than what happened to Hopper, is like you can't walk straight at all.
Also, we got to talk about infections and all that.
They were dragging. You remember they were dragging him out of the fucking torture room, like his feet were dragging on the ground. And I'm just looking like, okay, so he's going to be out of commission. Like when they go to rescue Hopper, I was expecting him to fully be unable to, like, Hopper, we need you to move. Like Hopper, we need you to like muster your strength. So that, and I thought they were going to have him, in the middle where they're both carrying like an arm because he's a big guy. Hopper's huge. Like Murray and I think Winona Ryder's character, I thought they were both have an issue getting him out, but no, he's just like completely.
He's fighting Demogorgons.
He's fighting Demogorgons. Actually, he's completely fighting Demogorgons.
Ran through the sno barefoot. I was like, dude,
they said I was like, 2-hour trip. I was like,
did they really?
Yeah, he said, like Yuri said, it's 2 hours from the church to the prison.
He did say that.
I was like,
by ride.
Like, yo, Hopper's not gonna have feet. Like when they showed his feet again, I thought they were going to be like black.
Yeah, they should have been obviously frostbitten, but
his feet were just like kind of pink. I was like, my man's feet should not.
Then he found some peanut butter and it makes it all better. Nice little ad there, Jif. Jif bought some advertising space.
Something that always bothers me in like just any movie or anything like that is when someone has been through something traumatic, they are filthy, and then they find some food and they're just like, all the fingers.
I hate it,
and I'm just like, wash your fucking hands.
Yo, Gary was in the room with me when I was watching that particular. This is episode 4. Gary was in the room, and I was like, Gary, do you watch this? He was like, yeah, I watched season 1, and then after that, I was done with it. So he's watching the episode with me, and it got to the part where Hopper put his hands in the raw peanut butter and just scooped it into his mouth, and I cringed. I visibly cringed. I was like, ew. And Gary started like laughing at me
because like he's in a church. There was running water. There was running water for sure.
I get that he's like super hungry and all that stuff. It was just a funny scene. Like I don't really care about it, but I do care about the fact that Hopper seems to have a Wolverine healing factor this entire fucking season, and I'm just a bit over that. Like that just, like you said, the Russia plot line was not.
He's also just like plot shielded in general because
he is.
Unless I missed something, like they don't really explain how he survived season 3. He just like survived.
Yeah, they showed him run past the explosion
in the room.
Yeah, they show him. So they do show a flashback of it, which is so bad. The flashback they show of it was that's just not what happened. They just simply didn't show what happened. They showed this man running away from the explosion, like actually outrunning it on some fucking Superman shit. He outruns the explosion and then he gets shot into the portal and then he ends up in Russia.
It's almost like the showrunners knew that season 3 wasn't good and not many people liked it, and they were just like, we're just gonna just move past that. Act like it didn't really.
It definitely seems like that because I will say this: the whole big thing of season 3 was that Hopper was supposedly killed, and it was a sad moment at the end of it when everyone was reading off their letters and shit, talking about how great of a man he was and how life is going to have to go on without him and how he was a hero. There was all of this talk about that. And even this season starts off with Elle saying, my dad was a hero and all that stuff. It honestly, his death made a lot more sense for the show and for the trauma of Elle. Like, it sucks that she has to keep going through all these traumas, but honestly, in depth, Hopper was a better character having died the way he did, as opposed to like now this Russia plotline that is honestly just a comedic relief. I can't see any part of it as anything other than comedic relief, and also to introduce a Demogorgon back into the plot.
Which makes you realize they still haven't beat it. Like, I just want everyone to realize the Demogorgon from season 1 has
Is
never
it the
been.
same one, or is it a different?
I don't know if it's
At the
the
end of
same
season
one.
1, she does turn him into like ribbons, doesn't she?
No,
Yeah,
no. I don't think so. I feel like
doesn't
what
she
I remember,
turn the Demogorgon like in the dust by the end
I
of
thought she
season
does the same thing she does to 1.
Right, exactly. So I think she just sent it back to the dimension, and then because the thing that
And that dimension might be
that
Russia for all we know.
it happens to Elle too. The dimension might be Russia.
It might be Russia.
She sent it to Russia. She was like, "Get out of America,
Dog. It might be Russia.
Go to the Soviets."
What proof do you have that it isn't Russia? Like,
that's
as far
true.
as we saw in season 4, Hopper got sent to fucking Russia.
And Hop was like, I don't know how it got it. I don't know how it came here, but it's here and it's gonna kill us.
I think she sent the Demogorgon to Russia, and they were like, "Oh, a pet," and they just captured it.
Fucked up.
They easily captured the Demogorgon.
It. Like,
and they fucking Pokemoned it.
But they've never the Demogorgon has never been defeated. Even I thought when Hop was gonna throw the spear into its face, I was like, "Oh, it's a weak spot." And it was like,
I knew he wasn't going down from that. I was like, he gonna spit that out.
In my head, I was like, how do you beat this thing?
Yeah. Also, dog, can we just talk about the entire Demogorgon premise in season 4? When that shit came out, so there were like a good 12, 15 men ready to fight this thing. And I legit thought, and I knew that a lot of them, because they're characters we've never seen before, you knew that they were going to be used as fodder. I still thought that it would be a lot slower than it was. When that fucking thing came out, and the first guy, first of all, it jumped over everybody. It like chose who it wanted to kill first.
I love the way it hurdled.
It hurdled.
Bro, the way it ran forward and jumped over everyone to get the specific one guy it wanted to start and ate his head. I was like, holy shit. Then the next guy just like smacked his head like twisted around.
Yeah.
You know, the weakness of the Russia plot line is almost forgiven for being able to see that Demogorgon scene.
Yes,
it was almost like the Darth Vader scene in
Rogue One. Yo,
because like, keep in mind, like, season 1 of Stranger Things did not have a big VFX team. It was just kind of a startup show. They didn't really have a lot of budget, so they had to like be tricky about how they showed the monster. But in this one, they were like, "We got the budget, bitch."
Yeah. So you got to see it rip some humans apart.
You really got to see it do what it does best, and I thought that was great.
Whoever worked on that did a fucking fantastic job, because that thing scared the shit. Like, it put it into perspective for me that it could wipe out 100 humans no problem. Like, it could zero diff 100 human beings with ease. How much stronger and faster it is than us. Like, we don't stand a chance against it.
Which like kind of makes you think, like, damn, how did Will survive?
Yeah.
It does make me wonder though, like, how do the Russians even control it though? Like, how do the Russians get it back in? Like, why doesn't it just jump up the steps and kill? Like,
that's the problem with the plot with the Demogorgon.
How do they control it? Like, how do they get it back in?
The entire Russian plot line is so bad that I was thinking the same thing after I saw how much havoc it wreaks. Also, the fact that it can open steel doors with its bare hands, bro.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, so you mean to tell me that they keep on getting this thing back into captivity? How? How?
Maybe it's happy after it's fed. It's like I was hungry. Like a Snickers commercial. And they're like, you're not yourself when you're
inmates. They plump the inmates up blatantly, and then they send them in there to get killed. But then they also watch it from just a balcony, like not a far balcony either, like a jump away.
They don't watch it from a safe place.
Yes.
Like, maybe they know it's weak to fire or something. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think would.
I assume that they have flamethrowers, and like maybe a firing squad comes out with flamethrowers, and they just shoot the flamethrower and herd it towards back towards this room. Like, go and get.
But it's an intelligent creature, so I'm just kind of like, I'm also just like, how have you kept this thing in captivity? But yeah.
So
Stranger Things.
Another, like, going back to like the other, just real quick, and then this will kind of wrap up the weakest parts of the show. When they drove to Susie's house,
when they drove to Mormon Land,
and when they go to Mormon Land, and fucking One Trick Pony character, like, as soon as he sees the girl, it's like, oh boy, they're gonna get together. fucking. This is another thing. It was like a break of immersion a bit. When they get to Susie's house, it felt like I was watching a Disney show. Like it's just like a bunch of kids. Like it didn't feel like. I just felt really disconnected. Like it was just such an over the top Disney type experience.
But you know,
what am I watching right now?
For what it was, though, like for what it was in a vacuum, I thought that that like those scenes or just like that scene of them entering the house was great because I thought it was kind of like a funny joke because you know Mormon people are known for having a legion of children. And he had a legion of kids. So when he was getting punked by his own kids, I was like, bro, you did that to yourself. But you know, but I thought like that was funny. And Susie's character in general being like a General Mary Sue, I feel like is not as bad as it otherwise would be because the writers are in on it. Like they're in on the fact that she's a Mary Sue and they kind of lean in heavily. So she's like an over exaggerated one-dimensional character.
I don't really hate Susie. It's just that parts of that section of the plot it's one of those things where it's like
I think it was because it was a part of the plot.
It just is like
because that whole part of the show was like you're wasting what this one-dimensional character is good at for what exactly.
I really hope in the last 2 episodes that they somehow tie like this, like Mike and Will and what we're all, because it really feels like they're not even part of the show. Like everything that's happened in Hawkins is so fucking interesting and good. Vecna 1, the stuff with Elle, even though she's not Hawkins anymore, but that ends up being super connected, and everything that's happening in like the main plot is so fucking good. And then like you have the stuff going on with like Mike and in wherever the fuck they're at.
Nevada just now, I guess.
It doesn't even really feel like it's part of the show. Like they're just kind of like doing stuff.
Yeah, I feel like it should have come a little more full circle before this volume came to an end.
I mean, I agree. There's a lot of stuff in this this season, as good as it is, it does definitely have its faults. And I guess the show in general has had some weak points with like 2 and 3 and all of that, but they do have a lot of redeeming things. So we've been kind of pussyfooting around episode 4 a lot, but we mentioned it in pieces. Victor Creel's aspect, the Russian prison escape and the return, and then the Victor Creel and all that stuff. But yeah, Max gets an entire episode called Dear Billy.
Max gets an entire arc that's great.
She does get an entire arc. So she finds out how the curse works. She realizes that Chrissy was cursed, the reporter kid was cursed, and that she's actually been cursed too. And after about 7 days, roughly around that time, you die. So she's preparing from the very onset of the episode. She tells everybody, like, look, this is what happens. I've been experiencing these symptoms, and basically this is probably going to be my last day. So they're all really fucked up about this. So they decide to keep eyes on her, literally. There's one point where she's writing her letters, and all the boys are behind her, and she's like, I can feel you guys staring at me. And they all kind of just like stop doing it, and then she turns around, passes them their letters, and she's like, you can look at me now. And they all like, oh, thank God. And it's like a really funny scene. But the whole episode, the atmosphere of the episode is extremely sad because this teenager is essentially preparing for the worst.
Yeah, she's literally writing her last words and shit. Like she's so young.
And there's a part of the way the episode is directed, and I guess the way Max's character has been handled because her brother died at the end of the last season. There's a part of it that makes it almost seem like she is ready to die too. You kind of
she's kind of given up. Yeah.
Yes, there's a part that seems like she's accepted that she's going to die. And that almost like she's embracing it. So she goes back to see her mom at one point, and they have a tumultuous relationship. And when she does that, Vecna actually ends up doing a genjutsu on her, and it's not actually her mom.
Which was so fucked up. I'm just like, yo, this guy is foul. He
is wild
into your because let me tell you, I don't have kids, but if I had a kid and they gave me a letter and we're like, okay, I'll be seeing you, Dad, I'd be fucking terrified.
Yeah, you would be very
like,
scared.
what are you gonna go do? Like,
you would not let the kid go, first of all. You would just be like, absolutely not. Dude, like the way you're talking is wild.
Max had a super when she's talking to Lucas, and I think Lucas says like Max, like everything will be okay, and she's like, don't say everything's going to be okay. Like people have been telling me that my whole life. It's never true. Like every time anything happens, people tell me it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
we're going to be okay. And I thought it was really cute how she was like, I should have knew I was going to get cursed. Like I should have known.
Yes, she's very pessimistic about everything, which I love.
And even when she's reading like the letter to Billy, she like says for a while, I tried to be happy. indicating that she just kind of like gave up. Just she
and
like
the
gave
whole
in to
season
the
they
weight
show
of
her
life.
being very just guarded. Like Lucas tries to reconnect with her and she's just not really into it. Every time he tries to talk to her, she kind of just wants to get out of the conversation as fast as possible. She doesn't really want to socialize with him. She doesn't even want to go to his basketball game. She doesn't care. She's like, get a ticket to somebody else. And she's not just being a bitch. Like she genuinely is depressed, right? And she's handling the death of her brother the best way she knows how. So when you finally get to episode 4 and she's accepted what's going to happen to her, like she knows exactly where it's going, and she tells everybody, like, look, it is what it is. Like this is just what's going to happen to me, and don't read these letters until I'm done. Then you have like Robin and everybody. They're going to see Victor, and they found out about the music aspect because when his son was killing everybody in the house, he recalled the voice of an angel, and that actually ended up being a song that was basically like his favorite song playing, and it kind of was his
Ella
link back to
Fitzgerald
reality
song,
from
yes.
that genjutsu. Yeah. So they call Dustin and they let him know, like, yo, well, they don't even show what they say to Dustin, but Dustin gets the walkie-talkie, he's running crazy, like, yo, what's your favorite song? What's your favorite song?
It was great the way that they like alluded to that being like in a psychiatric facility, and the head of it saying, music reaches a broken mind sometimes when words
they did a really good job on the writing.
Like that was all really, really well done.
I did like they even showed some of the crazier people.
Because Robin is the one that kind of put it together when they were walking back after
she saw them.
Which my favorite pairing has been Nancy and Robin, because they are two of my favorite characters. Nancy is like, she was easily like my favorite character, and then Robin showed up and I was like, oh, she's also like one of my favorite characters, and them together is like Nancy Drew and Sherlock Holmes, and I was like, well, what the rest of you bitches gonna do? Nothing, because they're gonna
like out. Nancy and Robin's probably the best thing that came out of season 3, right? Like I like Robin a lot.
She is.
And Nancy, I like. My favorite characters since season 1 have always been Dustin and Lucas. I don't know why, but Dustin and Lucas are just my guys.
I love Dustin. Dustin is fucking hilarious to me.
They're my guys.
Also, there's a lot of profanity in this season, just to throw that out there. I thought that was really cool that, when you get to high school, cursing is just a part of the way you speak.
That's true.
And these kids are cursing so fucking much in this season. I was like, damn, they say shit and they say everything a lot. Like a lot. That's like shit. Like when he dives into the car to get the walkie-talkie and he runs back with all the CDs, or not CDs, but cassette tapes. He runs back with all the cassette tapes. He's like, what's your favorite song? And he's like, shit. And he's spreading them out.
Yeah.
They're trying to find it. Bro, when you see her being cursed by Vecna, she runs to the actual mansion that's all deconstructed and floating in the air. And she's in the upside down. I was like, okay, so they're about to kill this girl. And I'm not ready for this because the deaths have been so brutal that when they show her kind of sit, like her legs crossed, and she's still sitting down with the letter in front of her and everybody surrounding her, she hasn't quite risen up yet. And then she sees Vecna comes up and he's like, don't you like it here, Max? And like, don't you like the way they look? And she's looking at the dead bodies of Chrissy and the guy. And she tries to run away. And Vecna shows that he has really good control over this area because he flicks a finger and one of the tentacles grabs her by the leg. And then another one grabs her by the fucking neck. And they restrain her up against one of those poles. And she starts getting choked really, really bad. To the point where I was like, yo, they're really, and then she floats up in the air. I was like, they're really going to kill this girl. And the boys are still struggling to find like the CD they finally get it on top of her. And like they put the headphones on her head and the song starts playing running up that hill. And they played it at other times in the season, like before this very moment. But when they play it this time and Vecna's trying to get her to give in and join, he says, join me, which means just like, let me kill you. Behind him and in her distance, you can see the portal open up to the real world and all her friends looking up at her floating in the air. And up until this point, again, I thought that she kind of resigned herself to dying, but the way she had been fighting Vecna was like, okay, she actually wants to live. I started to get really emotional when you realize that she doesn't want to die at all. And that she really did have the will to live. And as the song is playing, and they're like, her friends are literally fighting for her and tell her, like, come back, like Max, they're calling out to her. And she kind of rips a part of his neck off and he releases the restraint. She runs away. A part of me was still afraid that she wouldn't make it out. And that's what made that entire scene with that song pairing so hard to watch, but like so emotional at the same time.
Now imagine all of that, all those feelings that you were feeling, except I've been a fan of Kate Bush since college.
Oh, wow.
So like all of that plus that song, I was like damn near bawling.
The lyrics to that song
was,
are also really sad because she says about trading places. Like, I would ask God.
So do you know what that song is about? Like what it's supposed to be about?
So when it came to Stranger Things, right? I tried to use the context of the words they used in Stranger Things. They don't play the whole song. They play like I would ask God to trade play if we could switch our places. And I was like, damn, is she kind of trying to say like I would switch places with Billy? Like I'll let you live and I die instead. That's kind of how I took it in Stranger Things. I don't know what the actual song was referencing.
That probably
in 1985.
that probably was like the mentality of that behind them choosing that song.
Yeah, because it just had that feeling to me. Like I would get God to switch our places. I was like, those are some dark lyrics.
So the actual name of the song is "Make a Deal with God." That's what Kate Bush wanted it to be, but couldn't have that be the name of the song at the time because like then it wouldn't be played in like religious places. So
that's true.
Running Up That Hill. So, but the song is about like if she as a woman could trade her place with a man, and basically it's about better understanding of just all of us.
Okay.
So that's why she's saying like if we could trade places, there would be no problems. Because
and it's cool because Billy died, her brother, and Max, a man and a woman, and it still kind of has that like I would trade places with you so that you can live and I'll die in your place. The lyrics to that just made me. I literally was about to cry. Like I was sitting there as she was running and all the debris was falling down in front of her, and Vecna was watching her go. I felt like at some point during that shot is so amazing. I thought during that shot that at some point either a tentacle was going to grab her or something was going to fall in her way and impede her running, and then the portal will like close up or something. I was thinking worst case scenario. I really thought that I was going to see Max died in episode 4.
And then they cut to black, and like if the episodes had been shorter, that would have been the end of the episode, and you'd have been like, no, like you would have been at 4:00 in the morning, like I gotta watch another episode.
True. But, if that episode ended like that, you would have had to start episode 5.
But then like she wakes up and then like Lucas grabs her and like you could like they really did act the hell out of that scene because like they were like terrified.
They were freaking out.
And like you would be too if you had all the context.
For people who don't know.
But yeah, I've been a huge Kate Bush fan since college. If you and Running Up That Hill is like #1 on iTunes.
I was gonna say that for people who don't know, Running Up That Hill is now the #1 song in the world on iTunes.
If you like the song, please go listen to the rest of the album. Hounds of Love is great. Kate Bush is a damn queen. Go listen to her music. She is amazing.
Also, always the first time I ever heard Running Up That Hill, and I was addicted to it from this show. It's another show that takes place in the 80s, but it's Pose. There's a show Pose. It's basically about the gay ballroom scene in the 80s, like the pretty much the beginning of it. And it it deals with like HIV/AIDS and that whole epidemic and just a lot of things that gay and trans people go through at that time and trying to be like real. And by real, I mean assimilate into heteronormative culture. So the show was really good and it won a lot of like Emmys and Golden Globes and all types of shit. But even past that, the soundtrack for Pose, because it's the 80s, it has Running Up That Hill and a lot of other songs that I really like Tiny Dancer and all types of stuff. It is such a good soundtrack. And I always liked Running Up the Hill from that show. So when I heard it in Stranger Things, and when they first played in like episode 2 or 3, I was like, oh shit, I know that song. I didn't know that they would use it again later on in such a meaningful way that just completely blew me away. But hearing that song used twice in like the last 3 or 4 years of my life and having it actually on my playlist, it's just been on my playlist for a long time now. I love it because I really like, I guess, sad emotional music, even though I'm not necessarily sad and emotional at the time. Like I just kind of like the mood of that music. There's just something about it. It just speaks to me.
Have you listened to any of her other songs in that album?
Not yet. I remember you told me to on Discord like yesterday.
She's got a very like ethereal, almost kind of witchy sound to her.
I'm a fan. I like Florence and the Machine, so I get that vibe.
Florence and the Machine, I believe, said that Kate Bush is like one of their inspirations.
I'm not surprised at all because now I can literally hear it. You can.
I mean, she's inspired. So you know the song by Maxwell, "Woman's Worth,"
yes,
that everyone loves. Originally a Kate Bush song. And,
oh wow.
That video. There's a part of that video where it like kind of gets to like the bridge of the song, and it always like. The video, specifically when I watch the video, always makes me cry. It's a very, I don't know, something about her. She is a witch, I guess, because
she's a witch.
She's
Wait,
always casting spells on me.
Which video makes you really sad?
The Kate Bush version of this woman's
Okay,
work.
I have to check that out.
Yeah,
Kate Bush is amazing. I actually defended her this morning. I started this morning off with violence because I posted.
Did someone say a bad word about?
Hold on. No, they didn't say anything bad about Kate Bush, but what they did say was, so I posted the iTunes #1, and then someone commented and was like, "Oh, you should listen to the cover done by Meg Myers. It sounds much better. It doesn't sound as old and dated, and I think she's a better vocalist than Kate Bush." And I immediately was like, "Okay." So I said, before I respond to this, let me just go and play the cover by Meg Myers or whoever the fuck she is. And I listened to the first minute of it and I cut that shit off so quick and went right back to Facebook and started fast typing. I was like, yeah, I strongly disagree. Like the 80s version, the original OG version by Kate Bush is definitely the definitive and best version of it. Not every song needs to be modernized and be updated with like the current drums and sound of 2022. Like I don't need every song. The song has a soul to it. Like Running Up That Hill, the original version has a soul to it. And when I listen to the Meg Meyer version, like sure, the girl can sing and all that stuff, but it's just lacking the soul that Kate Bush had in the original.
I just don't get why people do, because in like the comments of Kate Bush's video of this woman's work, there are a lot of people like disparaging like it because I guess they discovered that that Maxwell's song is a cover. Right. And they're like, Maxwell did it better, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, are y'all fucking morons? Obviously, Maxwell was so inspired by this song that he was like, I love this and I want to sing it. Like, I just don't get when people do shit like that. I do
hate that fucking culture of like the people comparing like, for example, like you just said, obviously Maxwell loved that fucking song. That's why they covered it to begin with, number one. But number two, I also just hate when people are like, oh, this cover is so much better. Because I've run into that a bunch of times where somebody will send me a song like, this one's done better. And it is always, I guess not always, but to me, it's very often lacking like an aspect, like the tone of the voice. Like something about it is always just like lacking. And it's like, it feels like, oh, this song's great. They're a great vocalist, but it doesn't feel like it's the same. There's something missing.
When I listened to the cover, the Meg Meyer version of it, Meg Myers, whatever her name is, it just honestly felt like a cover. It felt just like a cover. It just felt like somebody singing someone else's song who hadn't written the song, who hadn't really felt the song the same way. And that's what kind of just disconnected me from it, because when I hear Kate Bush singing it, the sadness in me, and I guess the sadness that Stranger Things was able to convey, comes in the soul of the way she's singing it. It really does sound like someone at the end of their life or begging for suicide. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I was trying to like pussyfoot around saying that when Anthony asked me earlier, what do I think it means? But to me, honestly, it really, the way they did it in Stranger Things made it seem like Max would want to trade places with her brother, which may be the case.
Yeah.
And there's a sadness in that, like losing, I don't know what I have one sibling, and if I lost my sibling, it would fucking shatter me. So I totally understand like how Max is shattered, and I haven't even lost my sibling is still alive and well. So it was just, I don't know, there's like a lot of emotion that's captured in the way they use the song and the way Kate Bush sings it. And I just think that the cover captured the same way. Like, I understand you like the song and you sung it because you're in love with it and you just want to pay homage to it and tribute, but fans can be toxic. It's not, I have no problem with the girl who sung it, Meg Myers or whatever. I have no issue with her whatsoever.
It's the fans. It's always
the fans who are like, she did it better. I just hate that whole thing where people cover a song and they're like, oh, this person sung the whole 21 album better than Adele. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, no, she didn't.
Another thing I really liked about this episode and like part of the letter when she's like talking to Billy is there's a part, and it's like such a real thing, where she's talking about how they basically hated each other. Like, they were siblings and like they didn't get along. They hated each other, but like, maybe one day we became friends. And I like that a lot because like, I know like even with my sister, like through a lot of like our childhood, and I think this is true for a lot of siblings, but like we didn't get along very well.
Yeah.
And like, but there were, there's moments where we do, but there was like a lot of button heads and like cause of like strife, right?
That's normal for siblings.
But then like, as you get older, like so much things change, perspective changes, and you become, a lot closer with people. And so like, had Billy lived, they would have had that opportunity, right? Whereas like, instead, Max's feelings are like frozen in time, where the last time her brother was there, it feels like he hated her. But then at the same time, he kind of loved her because he did do things for her, even out of annoyance. but like they never got a chance to really grow past that and like, you know,
and
appreciate each other more.
Even more importantly, after she reads the letter and then Vecna invades her mind and is like, "You're not telling the whole truth." There's a part of you that there's a part of you that was relieved that he died that day, isn't there? And you know, like whenever, and honestly, that's really what makes him a villain, like a villain, is he really like fucked with people psychologically? Because like the whole eating disorder thing with Chrissy, and then what was the jock's name? Patrick, I think. Like they alluded to the fact that like his dad beat him. Like that shit is like real trauma that shapes
the one kid
you.
killed somebody in a car crash.
Like that is shit that like shapes
his
you as a
own
person.
father ordered a shelling of a fucking like infirmary or some type of place with children in it.
So for Vecna to like use all of that as ammo, I was just like, damn, he really is like a villain. Because like regardless if it's true or not that Max was relieved that Billy died because, you know, he was an asshole to her and she in turn was an asshole to him, like you do have like, I'm sure like it's like that darkness and doubt that really like lives in you that's like, is that true? Was I relieved?
Yeah, he kind of plays
like,
on people's sense of guilt.
I say that I'm sad. I say that I'm sad and I'm expressing that I'm sad, but like was there a part of me that was really, and that really is like that like inner like saboteur that really
also
like
survivor's guilt.
Yeah, that too. Like
definitely survivor's guilt. People who survive things because they were both in a situation where they could have died, and her brother ended up being the one. And it's like you feel almost guilty that you got to live and they didn't. Vecna just says some awful things. He really is a villain.
Man, he was foul. He was foul as fuck.
I think somebody described him as pure evil, like a spawn of Satan. I think Victor Creel, when he's talking about it, he said, I could feel, you know, it's interesting because I watched episode 4 again. As I said, it's the only episode I watched twice. But in episode 4, when I went back and now I know that his son is actually Vecna, I noticed that he said, I could feel the demonic presence was always close.
Yeah.
Right. So like knowing that it's his son now, as I'm watching the episode, it adds new context to everything. And a lot of that part was just so cool to me when you go back and watch it. Me and Kenny talk about this on the podcast all the time. But watching a show more than once really makes it so much better because now you know what to look for and things make more sense. Scenes that kind of didn't mean anything or words that didn't really mean anything, they mean so much more when you know what's going to happen.
Yeah. I love so much when something is given more context, or when things are totally recontextualized. Like I said earlier, how season 1 and beyond is recontextualized with the idea that Vecna is the reason why the Demogorgon is trying to kill 11. You know what I mean? Like, it completely changes because, you know, initially it's just kind of like, I guess they're just monsters being monsters. But when you give it a whole reason and you actually put the mastermind behind it, some people might find it corny, but I actually really, really enjoyed it. And the way they all tied together, the son, Vecna, and number 1, and how it felt like these are different characters that may be connected somehow, but then it's just like they're all the same person.
Realizing that they all run parallel.
They did it in a way that felt really, really good, like just really genuine and kudos, man. Like
it kind of feels like they straightened the storyline back up. I feel like the storyline was season 1 was like, you know, going in the correct direction. And then seasons 2 and 3 kind of took this like a little bit of a detour, right? Like things kind of go left and right and it's just kind of swirling path. And then season 4 just kind of put it back on track. I guess that's what I want to say. It just feels like it feels like it re-centered Stranger Things and put it back on track. And now I have a character I really root for again. Like I love Max. I love 11. Like I'm rooting for these characters now, right? Like I'm rooting for Lucas. I'm rooting for him and Max to get back together. Like I'm rooting for all of these characters. And then at the same time, I'm like, damn, this villain is actually very believable. And like somebody who actually I feel like is a legitimate villain, like the embodiment of evil. Like he's just fucking evil.
He's hella evil. But he feels so he's like what would be described as like almost a force of nature villain. But at the same time, he has character. Like it's cool because he does have character. He is grounded in like
like he said, the reason why I'm doing is like he said, these people have done bad things. My parents have done really bad things that you wouldn't even imagine. And then they start showing the cradle rocking back and forth with the fire in it and the baby screaming. And so he's not without his reasons. But when you say force of nature, I like that because he's kind of a creation of his environment. Like he was listening to his dad's inner guilt, right? Like Vecna has this ability to literally sense people's emotions and also their memories. He can literally see your memories and fucking change them up and make them way more ridiculous than they actually were and use them against you. So because he's able to do that, he's able to go into your deepest, darkest areas and pull from it. And it just kind of warps not only his perception of humans in general, but also the people who he's terrorizing. It makes him start to believe that like they're these awful people that are not able to atone for what they've done. Like his dad, who feels awful. Like his dad's not happy about what he did. He doesn't feel like a fucking hero. He killed children because he was wrong. Like he even says, like, I was wrong, and I live in torment because of
something that he regrets. But like, something that I wonder. Go ahead, Ant.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was going to say something I wonder if it'll ever get explained. Maybe it won't, and if it doesn't, that's fine. But I would like for it to get explained in that. So as we now know, all the psychic powers that the kids get, it all comes from one. Like one is the source, and like he extracted it from his fucking bone marrow or something. Dr. Brenner. So I wonder, like, what is the source of one's power? Did he have some connection to the Upside Down before even realizing it? Like, how exactly did he get those powers?
Yeah, that would be nice. Because we already got somewhat of an origin story, but like when we saw the origin story for him, he just had his powers to begin with.
Yeah, and it's not really clear why he has those powers, because now it's like you can't say that it's like something that just people have, because now we know that all the people that have those powers, they source it back to one. So it's like, where exactly did this come from? What's this connection that he had?
I do want them to kind of like explore his grandfather clock moment, because that really was like he broke reality kind of thing. Like to me, it felt like it was he was so just entrenched in his own philosophy that he broke reality himself.
Like he's literally molding reality to be the way he wants it to be, which is often kind of the Upside Down.
And often characters that do that, they tend to justify their actions, their philosophy, their mindset by like equating themselves to something in nature, as if they are doing something that is meant to happen, because like spiders are predators spiders are beneficial predators to the ecosystem.
Right.
But like,
and he likens himself to a fucking Black Widow of all things.
But like the spider doesn't give a fuck if you kill all of humanity or not. The spider is busy being a spider. So like you using the spider to try and justify why you're doing what you're doing is just it's what this kind of character tends to do. Because
it's kind of like Kira from Death Note 2, right? Where like you end up with a supernatural power, and then so you believe that, like, you justify it, like, well, I am God. I was given this power.
Like, why would I be given this power if I wasn't correct?
Yeah,
exactly.
And then
no one else can do this.
Yeah. So it is interesting. I do like,
because he's like, look, these spiders agree with me, and the spider's like, bitch, I'm busy being a spider.
Even Thanos, he says like, I'm the only one who can do it.
Yep.
Right. Like these people truly believe that it is their divine right to carry out the will, whatever will they think is coming from somewhere else. They believe that it is their right to carry it out and like kill all of these people.
So it's interesting that you use like specifically the term force of nature, because that is what that is. And honestly, this is the closest that a villain in Stranger Things has felt to their D&D counterpart, because that is what Vecna is in D&D. Vecna is one of the overarching, like, just long-lasting villains that has survived through all now 5 editions of Dungeons and Dragons.
Vecna is actually from Dungeons and Dragons for real?
Yes. He's got a bunch of monikers, like the Whispered One, so on and so forth. But like, for example, so I'm sure you've heard of Critical Role with Matt Mercer, the like celebrity now D&D campaign. Like their first villain was Vecna. Like Vecna is he's like a huge D&D villain. But he's almost always like secretly a villain. Like he doesn't like show up in like the first session and is like,
which is what happened here in Stranger Things, right? Like he was secretly the villain, and in season 4 is when you see him.
And like, so like any kind of background on Vecna, he's basically King Lich is probably the easiest way to think about it. He was a human, he was a necromancer, and then he died, and then he refused to die. and he is constantly refusing to die and is always trying to be brought back and is constantly having minions try to bring him back so that he can just have dominion over any that are in his presence, because he believes that he is that great of a creature, that great of a being. So like I was like by the end I was like, yeah, that's some shit Vecna would do. Like,
last thing I want to say before we start to wrap this up is I really like how they showed One's transformation. So when you first see One in L's dreams or memories, right? They show him and he keeps doing this repeated scene that she tries to escape from and she can't. She keeps trying to run from it. And he seems like this really weird, but almost like benevolent looking guy. He doesn't look particularly evil or anything like that. He doesn't look deranged at all. The way he's presented when you first see him, and honestly, up until the point where he becomes like Vecna, he just has a really nice appearance. Like he just looks like a regular guy for the most part.
Welcoming. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very welcoming and helpful, right? Like he's helping her throughout this entire thing. And after he snaps and she finds him killing the kids and stuff, and he's like, I told you to wait in the room. When he turns around and you see his hair now is like pushed back like on some eyes and shit.
I was just about to say he did the eyes.
He did do the eyes. You notice that his hair.
His hair is slicked back.
Everything about him changed. Like his hair has changed. His eyes are like bulging and they're like bloodshot.
Mm-hmm.
He has like the bloodshot eyes. His hair slicked back. His forehead's bursting with veins. He genuinely looks crazy now. It's the same exact actor, just recontextualized to look like a villain now, and you believe it as soon as you see it. It's like, holy shit, this guy looks off his fucking rocker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I like things like that where you take someone who you don't really see it for them being the villain, and then you see how Hollywood magic can really turn you into a villain. So I just thought that was cool.
And see, that's why when I was like going through the sequence at work and I was looking at all the shots, I was kind of like, okay, I know that I want to work. I was like, I want this one and this one and this one. But specifically, the one shot that I really, really wanted to work on is the shot where Elle looks over to like the dead kids and she sees the twins laying on the ground. And it's really like the first time that you really kind of understand the gravity of what he's done and what's been happening throughout the season when you see the two dead kids on the ground lying next to each other. And I knew, like, when I saw it, I was like, I want that shot, because I was like, I just have this feeling that shot is like important. And also was a really cool shot to work on. But yeah, like having looked at the whole sequence, I pretty much had only seen him with his hair slicked back. So when I saw him not like that, when he first introduced him, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, okay. All right. Well, I know where this is going.
Yeah, you know where it's going.
It's so interesting. Just like working on it and stuff is so interesting. It's funny how you said you were working on like a spinoff of Power and like bullet holes and muzzle flashes, and then you go to working on dead kids with their eyes gouged out. Like,
yeah, it's all
so brutal. It is all violence. Damn. All right. Well, before we get out of here, I want to give a shout out to our patrons over at Patreon. So if you guys don't know, the IMNerd podcast is a Patreon. You can find us on there by just typing IMNerd podcast or probably IMNerd. It'll come up. We have exclusive content on there that drops once a month. We have an exclusive episode that you can only get on Patreon. So that's something that you have access to. We also have IMNerd podcast Discord. You can get access to that even at our lowest tier, which is only $3. So check that out if you want to support the podcast. We really appreciate it. We already have 40+ people on the podcast Patreon. So, look into that. IMNerd podcast on patreon.com. We have Connie, Austin, Leon, Quest, Garrett, Xavier, Hylian, TCG Automotive, Silver Chronic, Tyree Tinsley, Dimitri Barnes, Alexander Brissett, Vinny Casello, Game Yoshi, Alex Flamer, Henri Reynolds, CJ, WK Dad 1, Saul at Dabbers Gaming Cafe, Dan Vrabel, Dennis Milburn, Joseph Marcello, Scott Page, Red Vines, First to Home, Delis Fernandez, Tom Wadabiki, Estada Akuma, Mitchell Nouse, Midwest Gaming, William Shapiro, Demetrius Feartis, Vince Marquette, Dallas Bailey, KJ, Doc and Ziggy, Biz, Roz Weiss, Luke Feeney, and Nick Stenko. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the IMNerd podcast Patreon. We really appreciate it. And as I always say, do the things that make you happy. What were you saying, Anthony?
I have a question. What are you going to do when you get to like 1,000 patrons? Are you going to still read all the names?
First of all, quit your job. Second of all, I don't know. We'll probably have a pre-recorded reading.
Yeah, there has to be. So we talked about this randomly like 2 weeks ago. I said it's going to get to a point where I can't possibly read off all, like even when it gets to 100. Like 100, reading off 40 honestly is a lot. reading off 100, like eventually we will get there, is also going to be, I feel like, too much. So there's going to have to be, like Kenny said, probably a pre-record or something of it. I don't know. We're going to cross that bridge when we get to it. But
it'll probably have to be a pre-recorded thing, and then it'll get updated like once a month. Like, so, you know, if you do it on January 1st and you have all the names there, right?
Yeah.
By the time February comes, there might be new patrons, but they're not going to be added to this recording until, you know, a month or two later.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
makes sense. Yeah, because it's 40 people is already quite the many.
Because it is a lot to read. But
so you're gonna hear your name in the next 30 days, guaranteed.
Real quick before we go, I want to say one last shout out to Lucas. I'm so happy he was a real one and didn't turn on his homies.
Yo, for a moment, and I was like, Lucas, come on, don't be a Mike.
I was so happy he was a real one. I was like, thank fucking God he was a real one. Yeah. And then secondly, this was like in the trailer, and I was shocked because I guess it's going to be in volume 2. But in the trailer, there was a part where it showed Eddie playing his guitar in the Upside Down. And so, like, I was waiting to see that scene because it looked cool as shit.
Well, I mean, because he's very obviously a bard, so, you know.
It never happened. So I guess it's going to be in volume 2, but I was waiting to see my man Eddie play the guitar in the Upside Down. I didn't get it.
Yeah, they definitely did. He did touch on it. He touched on his guitar.
I can't wait to see that, man. He's cool. He's a cool-ass character, unlike our guy.
Dude, there was a part of me that thought that they would cut his hair because he was on a run. And I was like, I know where this is going. They're definitely going to have him, like, cut his hair, and that'll be his way of, you know, kind of concealing who he is. Because if you cut hair as long as his, he was just like a completely different person.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, we didn't even talk about that part of the 4 of them in the Upside Down when Steve was metal as fucking ripped that thing apart. I was like, damn, that was metal as shit. And then Eddie was like, dude, that was pretty metal. And I was like,
pretty metal. That was pretty metal. There was some cool shit. Another part that like legit had my heart fucking stop was when they're all going through the rope to go back to the real world. And then when Nancy falls through and then falls in the pool, I was like, oh my God.
I was like, if they really killed Nancy like this, because again, I didn't expect it to happen. When she did not go where she was supposed to go, I said, "Oh God, Vecna's gonna get another body." I was like, "He's about to claim another body right now." Like, are you fucking serious, man? You know what I thought was gonna happen? I thought they would get to the last person, and I thought that he would confront the last person, right? So whoever stayed last, I was like, okay.
Nah, he knew. He was like, he saw Nancy. He's like, this bitch is a problem. Because Nancy's she's the ranger, and she's smart as fuck. She's got fucking aim, and she's intelligent. Anyway, we'll have to talk about all this shit on
because there's going to be a part 2.
Yeah, we're gonna bring this right back. We're all gonna watch both those episodes July 1st, whenever they come out. We're gonna watch them immediately, and the next podcast right after will be Stranger Things season 4, part 2. Anthony will be back for that, and we'll discuss the conclusion of this season.
I also worked on that. Season 2. Look at that.
Also, season 5 is the last season of Stranger Things, so the next season will be the last.
So wait, there's another season confirmed, and
I thought this was going to be the last one too, Kenny, but apparently season 5 is the last season. So I'm guessing Vecna might not die at the end of the season, or if he does, he really will just be considered a 5-star general, and there's something bigger than him. Yeah,
that's interesting. I do like. So I thought this was going to be the last season.
Me too.
Hearing that there's another season, but hearing that the next season is the last season, I'm happy with. It's like, all right, cool, because they have they know where they're going. Whereas like season 2 and season 3 felt like season 1 was successful, so we kept the show going.
Yes,
season 4 feels like okay, like we said earlier, we're gonna realign our vision.
Yeah, so, I also think that season 5 is probably needed to just give more context and backstory to the Upside Down, because you said this earlier, but I really do want to know the origin of the Upside Down. There are people who speculate, like Anthony said, that did Elle create the Upside Down? Like, did she actually, when she first sent Vecna to the Upside Down, is she the reason why it's the way it is, or like technically Vecna's the reason why it's the way it is? Like, why is it frozen 3 years in the past, which is the exact date that Will goes missing?
Yeah,
so, like that's when Will. I think it's like November 6, 1983. That's when Will goes missing in the first season. So why is it frozen on that specific date? And where did the Upside Down originate from? Like, why is it just Hawkins? It seems like, just give us something about that verse. I just want to know more about it before we say, okay, Stranger Things, the book is closed on it. Give us some reasoning to some of the stuff that has happened.
Yeah, before this season, if I heard there's gonna be season 5, I would have rolled my eyes. But seeing this season and knowing that like they're doing one more season, but it's going to be the final season. Like I'm excited for it.
And that it's leading up to something, and that definitely can't say that the Duffers don't care, because look, let me tell you, as a client, like they were very, very particular. There was stuff like what you're adding in, the defocus doesn't match the defocus that's happening in the camera specifically. Like it was shit. They were catching shit that like we missed. We were like, oh, okay, like
that's really
can't fool these clients. So.
No, that's
good.
Well,
it's good.
Thank you again, Anthony, for joining us for the podcast.
Of course.
We appreciate having you on. All right, guys. Well, if you want to write into the IMNerd podcast also, just to have us read out your letter on the show, you can write into IMNerdpodcast@gmail.com. We do listener letters on this show. So if that's something that interests you, if you want to, it doesn't even have to be about Stranger Things. It could be about literally anything that we've talked about or something that you just want to talk about that's nerd related. Write into IMNerdpodcast@gmail.com, and we may read it aloud on the show. All right, let's get out of here.
Have a good night, day, week, life.